Hi everyone, Kris from Stone Age Gamer here. Let's talk about controllers for the Nintendo Entertainment System. There was a ton of different variety of controllers and input devices for the NES. You had weird stuff like the U-Force and the Power Glove. But you also had a handful of officially licensed things that Nintendo would actually put their name behind. Stuff like the Power Pad, the Zapper Gun, the NES Advantage, and of course, this thing. This is the NES Max, and it's completely insane. Let's take a look. So like I said, this is the NES Max, and it is... Well, to properly understand how crazy this thing is, it's probably best to give it a little bit of context. So, for the longest time, this was how we controlled video games at home. It was the Atari 2600, arcade systems had joysticks, the home console had its own little version of a joystick and a button. It wasn't until a little bit later when Nintendo pioneered this guy that we kind of got where we are today with the D-pad. This was the game changer right here, and as you can see, this is yellowed and disgusting because this was actually one of the two controllers that came with my NES set when I was a kid, and I know that because of the select button. See that there? I had a hamster named Puffy who decided to get out of its cage and eat that select button. Yep. Anyway, dear Puffy, I was so angry at that hamster, but you know, it still works because these things can take a licking and keep on ticking. But yeah, hooray for yellowed controllers. But anyway, this became the standard, right? Who doesn't know this controller? It's wonderful, it's delightful, it's amazing, but there are a couple of slight limitations depending on the games that you are playing. In particular, something like Blaster Master. I'm a gigantic Blaster Master fan, and this game was so cool to me when I was a kid, but I got stuck in Area 3. The boss for Area 3 is this series of boxes that would come out, and the best way to beat it was just like hammer the heck out of it with grenades. And as fast as you could press your finger was as fast as you could shoot grenades. And I was talking to my friend Joey when I was a kid, and I said, I just can't beat the boss to Area 3. I just can't blow him up fast enough. And he said, well, you should get something with a turbo button. So he brought over his NES Advantage, and we messed around with that for a little bit, but I couldn't get the hang of controlling Blaster Master with a joystick, right? Because 2D platformers with a joystick just never really clicked with my head. So then he gave me this, the NES Max, and its wonderful turbo button. So if you're unfamiliar, which you might be, turbo buttons means that if you hold this button down, it's going to press the button digitally as fast as the system can possibly process it. It's completely bananas. And this is great, right? What a great setup. You got these extra little holder thingies down here on the end, right? It's about the same size as the NES controller, so it doesn't feel large or weird, but it's just a little bit more of an ergonomic design, right? It feels really nice to hold. You got your B and A buttons on a little bit of a tilt now, which is to say they've always struck me as being a little bit farther apart. You see that they're just a tiny bit farther apart than the B and A buttons are here. They're also, I guess they stick out a little bit more, so it's never been quite as, I guess, comfortable to do this, which is, if you're playing a Mario game, you're going to run and jump by, like, pressing your thumb back and forth. But you got these turbo buttons here, which are right here and very convenient, and it's also kind of a neat little foreshadowing of the Super NES's 4-button layout, right? Because this does work as 4 separate buttons. And, your start and select buttons, these are not made of rubber like the NES controller were, right? So no hamsters are going to be eating this select button, thank you very much. So this was perfect. This was a solution to all of my problems until I actually started playing it, because as you've probably noticed, if you've never played one of these before and this is your first time seeing it, this doesn't have a D-pad. This has whatever this nonsense is. So you've got this great controller here that's kind of dirty because it's old, sorry. And then you've got this thing. What the heck is this? So it kind of works like a D-pad. You put your thumb in this little circle and you slide it around. So it's almost like the circle pad on the 3DS, except it's not self-centering. And the way it works is you use it to kind of go in these circular motions or whatever, but there's all this give between directions, right? And it's really just pressing these. So you could actually use the outer rim of this as like a D-pad, kinda, but it doesn't work very well, especially for It's a precision platforming, like in Blaster Master. You're gonna try and, like, you know, jump back and forth. Like, you see how much area I have to cover to go back and forth with this thing with any sort of comfort? It's bananas. It's so difficult to use this thing. It's a little tiny bit easier in something like, say, Blaster Master, where you're in a top-down section where you kind of move around like this, but boy, trying to get anywhere with this was just the biggest hassle. So what I wound up doing was I would play the game with this, and then I'd get to the boss and I'd unplug this and plug this in. But that, if you remember back in the old days, was a really nerve-wracking experience because the NES was super fragile sometimes when it came to reading your games. And the act of shaking your system enough to get the controllers in and out could theoretically bork your entire game, and then you'd have to start all over again. And believe me, that happened to me more than once, thanks to this crazy controller. But it did eventually help me beat that boss. I practiced and practiced and practiced, and using the turbo button, boy, that boss was a real, just blew right through him like it was nothing. But for anything other than that one experience, I just about hated this controller, which kills me because this is so much more comfortable than this. But there's still no topping this, man. This is the design right here. This is the business. And this is pure unadulterated insanity that Nintendo put their name on. So there we go, right back here. Nintendo NES Max. Patent pending, made in Japan. I wonder if that patent ever stopped pending. The world may never know. The NES Max. Sure, it served its purpose, but it's also completely bananas, and I'm glad I never have to use it again. If you liked what you saw here today, please comment, like, and subscribe. Let us know what you think of the NES Max. What were your favorite NES controllers? Was it your introduction to a turbo button like it was me? We want to hear from you. Thanks very much for listening. On behalf of everyone at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games.